So how do you explain the bright spots?
It's not possible.
It is. They're mountains.
On a star.
Gigantic mountains whose peaks are touched by the rising sun while it's still night on the slopes. What you see is spreading is the light flowing down those slopes from the summits to the valleys.
But that contradicts the astronomy of the last 2,000 years.
Correct. What you are seeing has been seen by no one else but me. You're number two.
But the moon can't be an Earth with mountains and valleys any more than the Earth can be a star.
The moon can be an Earth with mountains and valleys, just as the Earth can be a star. One among thousands.
Michael has elevated the stature of Asolo Rep to a nationally recognized leader in American theater. And he's done this in a community that is smaller than would normally host a theater of this size.
And yet, it's great to get this national attention, but sometimes you can do that and forget the local audience. And Michael has never lost sight of that. He knows that above all, the Asolo belongs to the Sarasota community. He wants it to reflect Sarasota's interests. He wants to give them something that they think they like, but also to broaden their taste and to present things that maybe a little bit out of the comfort zone, but he always does it in a very careful, respectful way.
Michael is a visionary, and he has the capacity to share his vision with others in a way that excites them and encourages them to support his goals and his vision.
Michael Donald Edwards was born on August 6, 1949, in Ararat, Australia. He was the oldest of 7 children, 4 sisters and 2 brothers, born to Norma Eileen and Donald Bernard Edwards.
I came from a very loving family. My dad was full of love and affection, and my mother, she was constantly busy. She had so much to do, and she was always pregnant. I mean, basically, in my memory, she was always pregnant.
Ararat was a small country town about 100 miles northwest of Melbourne.
When I think about it now, it was a very kind of unusually bucolic time. The bread was delivered by a bread man, the milk was delivered by a milkman on a horse and cart. Australia was about 50 years behind America at that time. I can remember the arrival of the first television, black and white TV, the first house that got that. My mother, really, all of the fruits and vegetables and things was all brought to the house.
His father worked for the government-owned phone company, which provided his father with a 3-week vacation for the family each year.
We'd go to the beach, we had a tent and a caravan, and we would go to the beach, and we'd be there for 3 weeks. And that is probably the most intense bonding experiences that I remember of the family.
Michael attended Catholic school.
Mostly we were at school, little uniforms, sent off to school every day. There was me and 4 girls, 4 sisters, and then 2 brothers after that. But I really grew up with the 4 girls. It was me and the 4 girls.
English and literature were his favorite subjects, but he found math to be a struggle.
That was the source of anxiety for me constantly, was math, algebra in particular. There was something in the brain that didn't work. But English and reading, literature very early took me over and where I thought it was going to go.
Athletics at the all-boys Catholic school he attended was encouraged. However, Michael found Australian football and cricket to be as foreign to him as math.
And I had to play them, but I was no good at it. Whenever the ball came near me and I had to pick it up, I would be flattened. People would just take it off me and knock me over. And so I was hopeless at that. And cricket, not so bad, but still not great. My brothers both were brilliant sportsmen, as was my dad.
As a young adolescent, Michael was drawn to the priesthood and thought this could be his calling.
Because that looked glamorous to me. I mean, to a young boy in a Catholic school, the priests were powerful and charismatic, and I was very attracted to that idea and was encouraged. But then at the age of 16, my sexuality kicked in. And I realized what I was really attracted to in the church was the costumes, not the ideas.
For Michael, this was a seminal moment. Realizing he was attracted to other boys, which was contrary to the church's doctrine, he sought to find how this would shape his spirituality.
I had a big argument in the confessional with a priest about what was happening to me, and knew that my sexuality was not something that was wrong, that if there was a God, this is how he made me. And I knew that I had to leave the church as a possibility of, and I've had a very contentious relationship with organized religion ever since, which has nothing to do with God. It's just, I'm fascinated with it. It's been an abiding interest of mine. But it informs my love and passion for the theater, because really what the theater is a kind of spiritual home for me.
At 17, Michael left home to enter Monash University in Melbourne on a scholarship with majors in English and education.
I wanted to be a poet, I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to be an English professor, and when I got to university, that was my thing. I studied Latin and history and was passionate about being a scholar of some kind.
It was at the university that Michael discovered his passion.
I had my first exposure to the theater, and it was a rock version of Lysistrata, and my roommate at the time said, they're looking for boys to be in this show, and I didn't want to do it because his girlfriend was rounding up boys to come and be in it. So I went, and 6 months later I was president of the Drama Society. I had found my calling in a way, and my professors tried to stop it because they said, you're not going to get a first-class degree because you couldn't study theater at the time. It was extracurricular. And I just fell into it like it was home.
Michael graduated from Monash University with a BA honors degree in English and BA in education. He received an all-expenses-paid government scholarship to attend the university. In return, he committed to teach for 2 years in public schools. As a young teacher, he found a technique that would serve him throughout his career.
Being fairly shy, I basically discovered in teaching instinctively a kind of Socratic method of asking questions, asking them questions and allowing them to ask me questions. And this relationship developed of natural inquiry. And I found that my skill was really stimulating curiosity. And I wasn't afraid to answer their questions. And I wasn't afraid to say, I don't know the answer, let's find that out. And it was really, I found my confidence in the classroom.
While he was hired to teach high school English literature, which he did, Michael wanted to stretch his students' horizons.
And I made a proposal to teach theater, drama, which had never been done in the school. They gave me a temporary schoolroom. I painted it black, got people to put lights in it, and started doing drama in the school. There were many of the conservative teachers in the school, this is about a 2,000 student high school, who were pretty unnerved by this, thought that I was a dangerous influence because the kids became really, really interested in it. We had to rehearse the play after school.
His theater project would not only benefit his students, but the teacher was learning as well. It was here that he directed his very first stage production.
I directed a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, which was the first thing I ever directed, and you can already see the connection with religion and the priesthood and costumes. The first show would be, of course, Jesus Christ Superstar, where I choreographed it and designed it and directed it with 80 kids in a high school, and basically I've been doing theater ever since then.
The experience opened new horizons for Michael.
I was off to the races, and from then on I was offered work as a teacher of theater, as someone to direct plays. I stayed for 2 years in the high school, and then I went off and I was teaching at a university.
During his tenure teaching at university, he received a scholarship to England for 7 months. The time there would help him make important decisions regarding his future.
Came back, left teaching, and went to work for the Australian Opera as a follow spot operator, which was my first professional job in the theatre, was operating a follow spot for the Australian Opera at the Princess Theatre in Melbourne. And while I was doing that, I became an opera fanatic.
While Michael was finding himself in his career, he was also coming to terms with his sexuality. While he was comfortable with who he was, he wanted his father to know as well.
When I came out to him, and I was concerned about how he would handle it, that, that he didn't have an athletic son in me, that he had a gay son, and he was a Catholic athletic guy, and military, he was in the military. And he was so awesome. He just got tears in his eyes, and he said to me, I just think about you as a kid, and I want to know, did we do okay? Were you a happy kid? Were you okay? That was his first concern. Had he been a good dad for me?
Michael continued to pursue his theater career. In Europe, he directed plays in London and Italy.
I directed The Rise and Fall of the City of Mahagony in London, and was thinking London was going to be my home, but never felt really accepted. They were not interested in me there because of my funny accent and the fact that I was Australian, although I did see amazing work in the late 70s in London, which stays with me now as shaping influences on how I think about what directing is.
When he returned to Australia, he found there were no opportunities to study directing in the university system. He determined he would apply for opportunities in the United States.
Applied to NYU, Yale, and UCLA. They were the three most famous universities I'd heard of, and decided I want to be at one of them. UCLA offered me a place and a scholarship. I came here in 1978, arrived in New York in August of 1978, and started school at UCLA basically a week later. I arrived with a backpack and a pair of Ugg boots and a sheepskin coat, and had really another truly transformative experience at UCLA as an MFA in directing, where I met amazing people, amazing writers and actors. We ended up setting up a little theater company in Los Angeles, where I taught acting, directed shows. We all kind of we were able to put together $25 a week, and for that we rented a space and put on shows.
Upon graduating from UCLA in 1982 with a Master of Fine Arts in Directing, Michael received a professorship of theater arts at UC Santa Cruz, where he stayed until 1998. It was here that he would become artistic director of the Shakespeare Santa Cruz Festival. It was also during this time, in 1988, he was introduced to the concept of sabbatical.
And this professor took me aside and said, you need to think of something you would absolutely love to do that you would not be able to do without a sabbatical. And I said, well, I'd love to go to the Met. And so I wrote to James Levine at the Metropolitan Opera and said, I have 3 months where I can come and be an observer at the Met, where the university will pay for me to do that. And I did, and he responded and said, come. And at the end of that 3 months, they offered me a job as a guest stage director, which I then ended up doing for 7 years. This was the late 80s, it was been 88, and I did it till like 94. And I would go every year, 3 to 6 months, and I would assistant direct and stage revivals of operas. At the same time, I was running a Shakespeare festival in Santa Cruz and directing at other theaters around the country. That's what you do when you're young. You just don't think about doing all those things.
While working with the Met, Michael became plugged in to life in New York City, partaking of the Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, along with the Central Library on Fifth Avenue.
I have a New York life and New York family that I slip right into as soon as I go back there.
In his personal life, Michael joined many of his friends in the fight to eradicate AIDS. The disease had become epidemic in the 1980s. While the government was slow to react, the gay community worked diligently to bring about awareness and change.
It led us, curiously, led us to becoming a much more intense and active community, that our friendships and relationships were based on much more than sexual attraction. That was still there, but what was happening is that was a spiritual and emotional thing. And there were so many amazing heroes during the AIDS crisis in New York who took on the federal government and the Centers for Disease Control and altered the way we think about patients interacting with doctors, which many people have benefited from. I think a lot of our active engagement with the idea of what drugs are and what they do came out of, and our understanding of the immune system. That come from a lot of these really heroic men, many of whom are dead now, and lesbians, who were helping do this, in New York.
Traveling between his commitments at UCLA and the Met was a challenging balancing act. He loved his work at the Met, but was drawn to the theater proper. When he was contacted by the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, he was faced with a decision: opera or theater.
And I chose to do Oregon. And that led me, Libby Apple, the artistic director, asked me to do that. And that led me back into the theater again, really through Shakespeare. And I couldn't do both at the same time. And so I really went back more into theater at the Oregon, because of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where I ended up doing Turn of the Screw, Henry IV Part 1, Winter's Tale, and The Merchant of Venice, which led me to doing shows all around the country, including at the Old Globe in San Diego and Indiana and Cleveland and all these different places. Syracuse, I ended up at Syracuse for 2 years as the associate there.
While Michael was working in his freelance period, Howard Millman of the Oslo Theater in Sarasota asked him to guest direct at the Oslo.
While I was down here doing that, he said, "You should apply for this job." I said no. He said yes. I did it anyway. And that was 11 years ago that I ended up taking the job here.
For Michael, taking this chance was more than just a job.
What I wanted was an artistic home, that I wanted to be able to do my own work. When I did the final interviews with the board, I felt I was able to be very frank and very open with them about what I was looking for, and for them to tell me, am I the right person? Do you want, I'm an odd duck, I'm a kind of a painted bird, and is this the person you want? Will I have a happy life here? And they all were, yes, we want you to give this a go.
Howard Millman had stabilized the theater and had got it out of debt, helped get it out of debt, and had stabilized it. But we wanted to go to the next step. We wanted to create a Broadway theater.
Michael wants to produce theater that connects all of us to the world in which we live in meaningful ways, and to tell stories that are compelling and engaging with first-rate actors, and using sophisticated technology that enhances the experience for the theater goers.
He's moved the Oslo forward in so many ways, but I'm thinking our musicals that we do at the beginning of the season now, that's the most graphic example. Evita, which just closed. As Michael said, we could have done an Evita 5 years ago, but we could not have done this Evita that was so technologically advanced, and just the images that were created on stage by the director with Michael's encouragement were just fantastic. It rivals something you'd see at the Met or at any Broadway stage.
Tell the singer this is where I'll play. Stand back, Buenos Aires, because you wanna know what you're gonna get in me. Just a little touch of star quality.
He came as a guest, as one of our guest directors. And he did such a wonderful job, and he had such charisma, and he was just so much life, and we all fell in love with him, and we knew he was the one that would take us to where we wanted to go.
Attention to detail is one of Michael's traits, yet he traces his directorial technique back to that very first teaching job in Australia.
I think what happens is you do all this preparation you have to make all this preparation as a director, and it is very connected to this idea of what happened in finding my voice in the classroom. Wasn't really about telling people what to think or telling them that this is what you need to know, but asking questions so that they'd eventually get to see things the way I do, or not. And what happens with directing for me is that I'm asking questions all the time. What's going on here? What's it? And I get the actor to tell me what's going on. And very often I go, oh, I didn't see that. Or very often they go, oh, I didn't see it that way. And because what happens when you do a play and you cast it, which is 90% of the job, getting it cast, is you have to let go all your preconceptions of what you do Hamlet You have to let go every preconception about who Hamlet is. And it has to be this person in front of you. It has to be this flesh and blood human being who has now got to be the Hamlet. You've got to let that Hamlet come out of this person, not some other ideal person. And it's the same with every play. Once you've got the actor in the room, it's not about turning them into something. It's about releasing something that is in them that they will become, rather than squeezing them into something that already exists. And I think that's at the heart of teaching too. That's at the heart of all good preaching, is really releasing the best of the person rather than forcing them into some external idea of what is good or right.
The chance he took, taking the position at the Oslo, has provided Michael with rewards beyond his initial hopes.
What I was not ready for was the depth of love and feeling that I feel here, that I now have family here. I have a genuine community here. And what I didn't realize was that's what I meant when I was talking about artistic home. I thought it was a place where I would get to tell the stories I want to tell, to create the productions I want to work with, to bring artists, exciting artists that I want to work with. Yes, that has absolutely been a part of it. But what has really happened in Artistic Home is that I am genuinely at home here. I feel surrounded by love and support.
As producing artistic director of Oslo Repertory Theatre, Michael has both produced and directed multiple projects, including the 2009 production of Life of Galileo and the 2014 production of The Grapes of Wrath.
How are you keeping yourself, Grandpa?
I always said Tom would come busting out of that jail like a bull through a corral fence. And you done it.
I didn't bust out. They let me out.
Get out of my way.
Get to the line!
In my tenure, we've produced about 100 shows, 100 productions. There have been musicals and big plays. There have been 5 new world premieres. I mean, of musicals, more of plays and so on. And some shows, like strike a chord for me is like, yes, doing Galileo, doing Brecht's Galileo in Florida, the 400th anniversary of when Galileo first pointed his microscope at Jupiter, and we were the only theatre in the country to do it. When 5 of them said they would do it, and we did it. We screwed our courage to the sticking place, and we did it.
Look hard. Where's your head?
There, down under.
What? Now isn't it precisely where it was before? With your feet still on the ground.
So why don't I feel it turning?
Oh, because you're turning with it. You and the air and everything that's on the earth.
So why does it look as if the sun is moving?
Oh, because the earth is always underneath you, and for you, it doesn't move. But look above you. Now, the sky's above your head. But if I turn it upside down, what's above your head now?
The floor.
And where's the sky?
Underneath.
Aha!
There's so many things that I'm proud of. The board, I look at the board, and these are people of means who could do anything with their lives, really. And they've made a decision to give us their time, their resources, their passion, and their advocates. I look at them and I just feel immensely proud of this group, and I feel it every time we have a board meeting. I feel I'm so proud of them and what they're doing. I'm proud of the theatre, our staff. I mean, when I look at this incredible combination of people, we have 50 full-time employees here now. And in the height of season, with all the actors and artists and so on, 250 people on salary at the Oslo at the height of season. What it takes to do that, what it takes for Linda and Corinne on the 3rd floor doing all the contracts and all of that together, what it takes to do all the development events put together by, Trisha and Laura, and what the marketing department does. When I think about what it was like when I first came here, Judith and Sasha and all of them in marketing, what they're doing is amazing to me. And when I first came here, I was anxious about all of that. I felt like I had to micromanage a lot of it. That is not the case at all now. I'm basically doing what I'm told. I get bossed around by these brilliant, competent people, and there's nothing better than that, feeling trust in the competence of everybody that's around you. And I feel immensely proud of that. And I feel proud of the actors and the people that are coming here.
We asked Michael Edwards his advice for those who follow.
I think having passion, if you have it, if you have passion for anything, and it doesn't have to be the theatre, it can be anything, writing, design, children, education. If you have passion, you must hear it and answer it. If you have the ability to play a musical instrument, you have a responsibility to do that. And I just, it's that is the main thing I'd have to say to any young person or anybody even now. Life is so short, it's over so quickly, and that's something I've learned here in Sarasota. I'm surrounded by lots of wonderful people who do something every day. I look at them coming into the theatre, physically compromised, could easily stay at home and feel sorry for themselves. And where are they? They come here and they want to see a story, a brilliant story well told. And I'm learning from them. They inspire me to go, I'm not wasting a day. I don't want to waste a day.